and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Review and approval of the agenda.
No changes to what was presented.
Approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? So moved. Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Consent agenda.
I just had a couple items on the bills that I'd like to discuss.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
We're moving what, the accounts payable?
Right. That's payable. I just had a couple questions.
Okay, we'll move it to 8B.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended? Okay, Susie has moved and Chad has seconded.
There is an item, 3F, that actually, 3F, is the retirement of a certified employee. Mrs. Smith has spent the last 27 plus years doing amazing things for our community and for our kids. And I did not want to simply, just without saying something, I owe her, and we all do, a huge amount of gratitude. And it has been a privilege and an honor to work with such a professional individual. And I would really like to vote no, but
I would like to vote
I
no.
know. So there's my feeling on that.
Okay. And I would like to echo Deb's feelings. She has been a real contributor to our school district. Next. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Moving on to delegations, audience delegations. At this point in time, we have two people who have signed up to speak to the board on a topic that is on the agenda. You will have 3 minutes in order to speak. The first person is Marcy Almo.
Okay, you guys, I'm going to have to read tonight instead of just kind of talk present, because I'm going to be stating a few things and I want to make sure that I say them as they need to be said in regard to past notes. And one of the first things that I wanted to start out with, I know the school board goes through so many processes, but I also think it's important that school board members be held accountable for their actions. I'm going to be referencing areas of the standard-based grading agenda item that was on the May 20th, 2014 Board of Education notes. It states, Marie would like to establish a subcommittee to review this. Susie, chair, no more than 3 on committee. Jeff asked specifically the intent of this, to discuss the move or whether we move, what will committee do? Jeff asked if teachers and other administrators are on committee. Jeff said it would be helpful to see both sides of issue presented. Marie says policy says purpose of serve, length of time, resources provided, and date report was made to Board of Education or superintendent. Purpose of the committee. is to explore standard-based grading and bring more info to the Board of Education. Short time committee, get work done in 2 to 3 months, resources provided, books and examples, date of report to the Board of Education or superintendent, July meeting or the retreat, July 11th, 14th, or 18th. Has to meet all sunshine laws, post, and take minutes. Susie, Jeff, and Marie to serve. Deb asked about other members. At this time, just 3 Board of Education members. No place in any of the May notes did it state that a recommendation was to be decided. We all know that a meeting was held July 13th at Mrs. Valley's house for the standard-based grading topics. We also know that the meeting was held illegally and that a formal complaint was filed with the Attorney General's office. Because of this, the subcommittee established and scheduled a second and a third meeting where information was presented by district educators, parents of our students. Pilot programs were mentioned to give the subcommittee of ideas of how standard-based grading was and has been implemented in various school districts our size. What we need to remember is that during the September board meeting, Mrs. Yoder specifically said the recommendations were decided at the first meeting, which was the July 13th meeting at Mrs. Valley's house. I would like the Board of Education to nullify the vote and a new subcommittee formed due to the fact that the original subcommittee overstepped their boundaries.
Chris Bell?
Thank you. The August and September meetings of this board, 5 minutes were allotted for audience delegations. Tonight it appears to be 3. I will go fast. I may go over. I come before you tonight to address agenda item 5C titled Board Notes. Because the only opportunity members of the public have to address agenda items occurs before your deliberations on those items, my remarks this evening are based on an assumption of what I believe this topic will include. Should my assumptions be incorrect, I shall then stand happily corrected. Open deliberation, compromise, and respect for one another's points of view are critical components of a representative government. However, when the actions of the board causes concern in the public, we have a civic and moral obligation to become involved and to look more deeply into exactly what is happening. We've seen this playing out in the public recently. Through newspaper articles and statements of board members, we've learned of numerous complaints to the Missouri Attorney General's office about the actions of this board. We've heard board members clearly state in open session their intent to violate state laws by destroying public records, and last month we watched in horror, in absolute horror, when this board refused to grant access to those records to a sitting board member who has never even seen them. Quite frankly, this caused many of us to wonder if the threat to destroy those records was actually carried out. What other possible reason would exist for this board to hide documents from one of their own members? I'm making no accusations here because I obviously have no proof, but I am begging you to see your actions through the lens of the public and to remember that for most people, perception is reality. To directly quote Mrs. Yoder from her statement in the Democrat Missourian on June 30th, quote, "I agree that communication was the big issue, and I think that is something we'll be working toward improving," end quote. I often review copies of the notes of meetings so that I can meet my obligation to stay informed and ensure that I correctly understood what I thought I heard at these meetings. If you've ever sat in these seats out here, you understand that sometimes it is difficult to hear every word. These notes are a critical tool for the public. Attempting to stop making these notes available to the public does not exactly lend a lot of credence to Mrs. Yoder's purported desire to improve communications. Last week, a very embarrassing article was published in the Democrat Missourian. Based upon the content of the article and my own familiarity with the notes produced at these meetings, I must assume that much of the information reported in the paper came directly from those notes. Perhaps it's a coincidence, but I find it deeply disturbing that immediately following publication of this article, this board is now considering actions to further limit the public and the press's ability to fulfill their obligations by attempting to squelch, edit, censor, or otherwise prevent these notes from being made available to the public. I would encourage each of you to think long and hard about how you're going to do this and the perception your actions may give to the public. To repeat a theme I used during my last remarks to this body, this board has a serious credibility problem. Don't believe me? Talk to people at a ball game. Open up Facebook. Read the newspaper. Look at all the Twitter tweets out there about this board and see how your credibility is playing in the community. Please don't make it worse by taking some sort of action tonight designed to make the deliberations of this board less accessible to the public. Unless this body has something to hide, why in the world would you want to keep accurate recordings of your operations out of the hands of the public? If you're concerned about how something you do or say may be perceived by the public, there is a much easier solution than simply trying to manage the propaganda. Number one, stop doing things that appear to be illegal. Number two, stop attempting to exercise personal vendettas against former colleagues. Number three, stop trying to hold meetings in secret. Number four, stop bullying those who disagree with you. And above all, number five, stop trying to find new and creative ways to hide your activities from the public and from your own members. In closing, I'm sure you all have noticed the video camera tonight because many of us, frankly, are very afraid of what may happen following your discussion on board notes tonight. These and all public meetings of this body will now be recorded as is allowed by state law. In addition, this afternoon I stood up a new website, HarrisonvilleSchoolBoardWatch.com. You can look it up right now if you'd like to. On this website, these videos will be made available to the patrons of the district. It will also host a forum for patrons to participate in discussions about the actions of this board and to strengthen the public's ability to stay informed about what's happening with their school board. Thank you very much.
Moving on to the Red Ribbon Week proclamation. I have here to read, and all of them listen to me read it. On video. The National Red Ribbon Week will be celebrated October 23rd through 31st, 2014. Whereas Missouri Drug Free Youth Incorporated is coordinating this grassroots community effort and a united effort with the National Federation of Parents. And whereas schools, businesses, law enforcement, churches and synagogues, hospitals, service organizations, government agencies, and individuals will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free choices by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. And whereas the Harrisonville CAS-R9 Board of Education further commits its resources to ensure the success of the Red Ribbon Campaign, now therefore be it resolved that the Harrisonville CAS-R9 Board of Education does hereby support October 23rd through 31st, 2014 as Red Ribbon Week and encourages its citizens to participate in drug awareness activities, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to healthy lives. Be it further resolved that the Harrisonville CAS-R9 Board of Education encourages all of its citizens to pledge to love yourself, be drug-free. Thank you. Now we have a report from, we need to approve that. Okay, we need a motion to approve the Red Ribbon Week proclamation. Do I have a? Okay. Susie has moved and Marvin has seconded that we approve the Red Ribbon Week proclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Roll call.
A roll call. Sorry about that. Gerald.
Yes.
Chad. Deb.
Yes.
Susie. Marvis.
Yes.
Marie. Yes. Do I sign this copy? You have one for me to sign. Wonderful. Now, do we have a member from our partner organization NET to make a presentation?
Tina's here to.
Tina. Welcome, Tina.
Hi. Risk factors that our kids face today range anywhere from teenage pregnancy, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, firearms, bullying, either as a victim or as the perpetrator, potentially due to trouble at home, extreme financial hardships. Other risk factors that kids face today are antisocial behavior, poor grades, hanging around the wrong crowd, and alienation, rebelliousness, which all contribute to delinquency, school dropout, and violence. Our mission at Harrisonville Net is to be a community coalition dedicated to educating, training, and preparing each generation for tomorrow's reality by reducing the abuse of drugs, alcohol, bullying, and other risky behaviors through community encouragement and involvement. Our goal is to help provide our teenagers with safe alternatives, introducing them to peers and adults with a positive influence, educating them on the risk factors they're exposed to, and talking to them about how to make appropriate choices. Harrisonville Net stands for networking, encouraging, educating, or teaching, and talking. Each year we participate in events like, most recently, Drug Take Back, sponsored by the DEA, which allows people to bring over-the-counter and prescription drugs to be destroyed. Now, we did get news from the DEA that April may be the last one. The government is going to pass something where this can be done at pharmacies. But in the meantime, until we know for sure that that's happening, there is, we're telling the public that there is a drop box at the police department in the lobby where if you had drugs to dispose of, you could do it there. Other recent events that we participated in were the Burnt District Festival. If any of you were there, you might have seen the caveman-sized turkey legs that we are hoping is one of our signatures that's going to become legend amongst the Burnt District Festival. Our upcoming events that we're going to be participating in are the Red Ribbon Week, where we will partner with the school district to help promote drug awareness. Next, we have Trunk or Treat, which is an event that enables the community to come together and provide our younger kids with a safe, controlled, and fun environment for trick-or-treating. We partner with the Harrisonville Police Department to recognize 2 outstanding students a month at McEwen Elementary School for Student of the Month. And we are also assisting the police department with the help of Jennifer Beavers and Bright Futures to organize the first annual Shop with Cop event here in Harrisonville. We're hoping to raise enough money for that we can help 100 kids shop with a member of law enforcement to help improve the opinion of a lot of these kids that they may have with unfortunate incidents with law enforcement. Our annual fundraiser, we sell holiday wreaths, centerpieces, crosses, and garland. Like the turkey legs, we kind of want this to become a signature fundraiser for NET. The biggest event that we do every year is the after prom party. The goal there is to give the kids a place to come after prom where they can hang out where there's no drugs or alcohol involved. We will also be giving 1 or 2 scholarships this year at the end of the year to a couple of deserving seniors. Our organization is constantly evolving. We're a group of people made up members of the business community, law enforcement, parents, but most importantly, we are made up of students. The dynamics change as people move on, risk factors for teenagers change, technology, social situations, that all evolves, so the group is constantly evolving. It was founded in 1986, and I would be willing to bet that the people that founded the organization would have no idea what troubles kids would face today. It's exciting to say that this year Harrisonville Net has had 28 students participate so far. This number is unprecedented. I've been in the program for 2 years, and we've never seen that kind of activity with the kids. So it's a direct result of the SROs, the counselors, the teachers, the dedication of the adults that participate in NET, and especially the youth that are driven to make a difference in their community. Our students have created a newsletter this year, which we have never had before. We've got a new t-shirt design that was designed by one of the kids. It's totally cool. We've had kids volunteer at these events, which again, that's been something that we've had struggles in the past with. I think this involvement of the kids today is a testament to the fact that they've been made to feel valued in this community, and they want to pass that value on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Than We appreciate everything that the members in that do to help our students make wise choices. Deb, did you have anything?
I do. Just a quick note. The regional meeting has been changed from tomorrow night until November 5th, and it's still at Great Tech. So if you are interested in going, this is, I'm sure, yeah. That's a little.
Yes. You did, you said this. Deb, you said this.
Yes, please. Sorry.
MSBA annual conference report. Several of us were able to attend. The workshops I went to were very valuable. I attended a small school that had a one-to-one initiative. Heard the superintendent talk about their initiative, how successful it was. Also was able to hear Dr. Lynn Young, who asked about Chad. He's a former Harrisonville resident, was my principal many years ago here. And he talked about parliamentary procedure. He always gives an excellent presentation. Will help me be a better president. Anyone else like to speak to some of the workshops they went to?
I went to several good workshops. One of them in particular that was good was the one on surveys. And I thought it was very interesting, some of the things that they pointed out. They do surveys for kids as young as third grade, and they ask 16 questions for third graders. And I found that very interesting. I was interested in one of the schools in St. Louis that every member of their board is an advanced board member, and that was one of their goals.
I also had the opportunity to attend several. One of them that I attended was four district schools in Ozark, Republic, Willard, and there's another one that just joined.
Republic, Ozark, Willard, Republic, Ozark, and
Yes, next is who I forgot. What they've done for their professional development is they have experts, teachers that if they teach a science class really well, they're asked to present to the other three schools' teachers. So it's really a networking, and with those schools, they're within 20-25 minutes of each other. It was just a fascinating concept, and it's gone over very, very well. And just to be able to utilize those resources of just another idea of how to teach a class, or another idea of how to maybe get to a kid that you might not have been able to. They spoke highly of it. Also, I had the privilege of actually attending several. And also, Mike Reed, who is the MSBA advocate in Jeff City, he mentioned a couple things that we need to keep an eye on for this coming up year. One of the things, unfortunately, it appears that they are wanting to potentially look at the retirement money again for the teacher retirement. That's coming up again to see if they can. Hopefully, what they're wanting to do is get the hands on it, basically, and hopefully that will not happen. There was also the other one that kind of stood out is they want to look at a school start date of after Labor Day and end before Memorial Day. And if we start in August, it has to be 4 days a week, and that's not legislative. They're in the process, I believe, right now. So, but there's. Go ahead, please.
Will the code change the number of required hours?
Yeah.
put your head down and do every day. You get about 3 days off probably.
It's
It would be hard.
physically impossible. I mean, I've worked on that calendar too many years to.
And again, that was the main point is really the grandsons and the communities where the
Tourists.
the tourists where they need the team workforce. And, again, no, the same requirements will still be there. The final one that they actually, and again, he talked about several of them, but one of them was specifically House Bill 1490, which is the Common Core Committees. As for the Missouri Learning Standards, evidently they've got 14 committees, and evidently they're not really going very well at all. What they have done is they've lost sight of kids, and that's the main thing that I took with that. This entire piece of it is lost sight of kids. Thank you for allowing me to go. It was good. Any comments that we had, Dr. McConnell?
I attended the one on for district sharing, and I will say that MRVC was looking at doing something with that possibly. But because of the number of schools, the distance between schools, it wasn't going to be successful. But I think it's something we can look at maybe a little more locally somewhere in the future.
Well, I did read McEwen's principal's notes, and I did read that the teachers there, if they had an area of improvement, they were observing a teacher that was doing that really well, and then trying to model. So I think that's wonderful within a school to be able to do that.
We've encouraged that really for the last 3 or 4 years to try to have teachers go observe other teachers from the school.
Right, so that is fantastic. Okay, moving on to board notes. We have heard from Chris how important board notes are to the public and how they find out what we are doing.
I will make a motion that the word "but" be replaced with the word and the word "not" be removed from board policy BDG.
Second.
Being a policy, will that be a first reading?
Yes, because it would have to be unanimous, and Jeff is not here. But for it to be first reading and pass, I believe it has to have all seven.
But we do need to go ahead and vote on it.
No, that will.
This is just a first reading.
That would be a first reading, so we would need to,
I'm sorry, I must have missed something here.
Do you want me to read from this policy? Would
Yes,
that help?
please, that would be
Yes.
great.
Policy BGGG is minutes. They're referring to the last, I don't know what page this is, but it's the last sentence in a paragraph that says, the minutes of the meetings of the Board of Education will include, originally it says, but are not limited to the following. They want it to say, and are limited to the following. And what it says, it's keeping in there is the nature of the meeting, regular, special, open, closed, etc., the time, date, place of the meeting, and the board members present and absent. A record of all motions made together with the names of the members making and seconding the motions, and a numerical record of the members voting yea and nay unless each member's vote is recorded due to a roll call vote or required by law. If a roll call vote is taken, the vote shall be attributed to the name of the member. Special notation should be made of abstaining members, and their vote should be reported as an abstention.
so that would be all your.
Those things that I just listed, if that is, it will say will include and are limited to only those things, would be my interpretation of it. Susie, can you?
So that means
What it does is to ensure that what's written down is what is put into, like if you wanted something specifically written down, you would say, like the minutes reflect. And that's what we'll be looking at, put down, it's what's recommended by NSBA.
I realize that this is informational, but Susan, if you will put in the minutes that I'm adamantly opposed to this. There is nothing that I have said in the 6+ years that I have served this board that cannot be repeated, or I am afraid that the patrons can see. I think this is poor timing, and I am adamantly opposed to this.
And I will make a motion that we follow the recommendation of NSBA in taking board notes. I just made a motion on the minutes of the meeting, of board meetings.
The motion you've already made has covered that.
Well, but then we have to wait and do that next month, and if I just make a motion that we follow NSBA recommendation.
But that would be changing the policy.
Yeah, I think we have to.
So we do have to go this direction. Okay.
Okay, moving on to,
I'd also like to run the record that you are the most professional secretary in the America. And whatever you type is the truth. And whether or not I like what you type, and whether or not I dislike it, and that's another thing that's honest. Whether or not we would like it or individually, I think it helps our public to know and be informed. And if we limit access to, we can't fit the whole community in this room to see what we say. And yes, no, yes, no. I can't stand those minutes. I would encourage the communication on the understanding of what's going on from here on down the road. I just think it's, I think when you stay, keep it away from the appearance of doing things that are inappropriate. Even though it's open session, everybody can see it, everybody can hear it. We need to be, Chris, we need to be aware of what we use.
The MSBA recommendation, that's coming from conversations within the MSBA, or is that from the?
It is actually in the policy, in training, and that we received from them, and from the policy recommendations.
I'd also like to get clarification on it as well. I realize that I would like to, I would like more clarification for, again, before, I will look at it as well, and I know that I've read it in the past, but I would like that to be
okay. Moving on to teaching, learning, public interest, 2013-14 audit report.
Diana Klosterman from Westbrook and Company is here to share results from their audit that they did in August.
Thank you.
Jill, there's a PowerPoint on there.
Yep. Do you have a advancer, or can I give you mine?
You can give me yours.
It sometimes takes a minute to recognize.
Okay.
No, not at all. Because I'm kind of in your way. How about I get over here just a little bit? There we go. All right.
My name is Diana Klosterman, and I am a CPA and partner at Westbrook & Company. Our firm's located in Richmond, Missouri. Since I saw you last, and I know the last time I saw you, I blasted through our visit because I had to drive on down to another town. I appreciate you putting me at the top that time and keeping up with the speed that I talk. I talk fast anyway, so I bet you I was just flying last time. But we also have, since I saw you the last time, acquired a firm in Carrollton, Missouri. So we have about 27 employees now. We do a lot more farm tax returns, and it's kind of scary doing farm tax returns this year with the IRS and Congress not stepping it up a little bit and telling us what they're going to do. So we're going to finish up audits here in another month, and we'll start thinking about how to do tax returns. I really appreciate our experience that we had out here while we were performing the audit. I feel like Kathy just gets better and better every year that we work with her. She was getting information to us in advance so that we actually did part of our audit field work back at the office before we came. Federal programs take a lot of effort, and one of our staff has been promoted and is doing some review work back at our office, so she did some of your federal programs work back at the office. So Kathy pulled together the information we requested, got some to us early, so we could work back at the office. We really appreciate that. I think we even got out of here an hour early this time, which everybody's always happy. I know they just love us when we come, but they just love us when we leave too. So we had a terrific experience, as we always do here. This evening I want to just talk about the financial statements for a couple of minutes. They look really good, and so we'll just spend a couple of minutes on those. I know I'm not going to help you any in getting to see the Royals game, but I'll do my small piece and get through this just as quickly as I can. When we start looking at the financial statements, the thing that we're most interested in is the cover, the letter on the front. And the letter on the front gives our opinion. We opine on your financial statements, whether or not they're materially correct. And what the report says on the second page underneath the heading opinion is that your financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. That's clean financial statements. That's what you want on the front of your financial statements. We did not have to make any material journal entries. Those financial statements that you relied on all year long for your decision making were materially correct. All right, I want to move all the way back to page 13 of your audit report. And page 13 of your audit report is your statement of activities. The statement of activities is a little unusual in that it starts with, let me try this one. Starts with expenditures on the left-hand side. All of the services that you provide, instruction, community services, food service, transportation. And what I do when I'm looking at your statement of activities is compare it to the previous year, because this is just 1 year. And look and see how you did when compared to the previous year. And I can tell you that your instruction cost increased when compared to the previous year. Your 13-14 instruction cost increased when compared to the previous year. Your operation of plant also increased when compared to the previous year. And your food service costs actually reduced this year just a little bit. And food service was able to come really close to breaking even there at $18,000 of expenditures exceeding revenues. And so food service came nice and close. That's about as close as you can get. And food service and community services are the only place that you can break even on the financial statements. Everything else has to be covered by basic formula, property taxes, sales taxes, interest income, railroads and utilities, and all of that is covered by some charges for services like food service, some grants and funds that are given to the district through state and federal grants and such, and the rest is covered by those property taxes and that state funding through basic formula. And so you can see down through there all of the expenses except for community services actually had to be covered, if you will, by those other revenue sources. But community services did make money this year. Community services are your parents as teachers. If you had before and after care, preschool, VOTEC, anything that's outside of K through 12. All right. The next page is your balance sheet. It looks pretty normal. It's got your 4 funds. That's the only thing that looks different than a for-profit, really. And you can see that it's on cash basis. You're not seeing your debt or anything on there. And so when you look at your balance sheet, which is on page 14 of your booklet, you see here it's a pretty big number, $21 million. But what the standard setter said a few years ago when we implemented GASB 54 is we want the readers to understand what's really available to pay the bills. And so if we would jump all the way back to the footnotes on page 25, it'll tell us of that big lump of money, what can we really use to pay the bills? And you go all the way down here to the bottom of your general fund, and this unassigned balance is $7.6 million. That's all you really have to pay the bills. You have some student activity money that's set aside, and it's in those buckets for student activities of $339,000. Food service, whenever you have a positive food service balance, that money has to be spent on food service. And so any money that's carried forward from year to year is in a food service bucket. And then you go over to the debt service fund, you can see a big number there. That's because you all partially refunded your 2007 bond. So that money's sitting in escrow till that callable date in March of 2017, and then you'll pay that bond off. So this money sitting here is just in a bucket, waiting to pay those debts that can't be used for anything else. And then over here in your capital projects fund, you have a little over $1 million sitting there for future planned or unplanned capital projects that the district may have. All right, this is your statement of revenues and expenditures, and it's on page 15. We've really talked about expenditures, and we'll talk about revenues a couple of pages back. So if we drop all the way to the bottom, then you'll look at your change in fund balance, and you can see that even though you had some bumps in your expenditures, instruction, and so forth, you were still able to maintain a positive fund balance, change in fund balance for 2014, 15, to 23,000. When you look at that column for debt service fund, you see that big number coming in, that $9.2 million. That's those proceeds that are sitting in escrow to pay down that bond when it comes up for its call date. And then in the capital projects fund, it did have a decrease over several projects that the district had, and then payments on its capital lease projects that are paid out of Fund 4. All right. If we go back to your footnotes and look at your debt schedule, that's where we'll see how that refunding bond came into effect. You can see right down here, here's your refunding bond from 2014, and there's that issue, the additions of $9 million. You also paid down your 2005. You made a big payment on your 2005 refunding bond of $1.8 million, and then you'll have another pretty good sized payment next year of $1.9 million. And then as you get on down through here, you can see your other payments that you made on your obligations. And then this final column shows you the obligations that you'll have coming up in 14, 15. Remember that money that's from your 2014 bond won't pay out until 17, I believe. Am I right on that date, Kathy? I think it's 17.
That's correct.
Yeah. So why do we refund? Well, you refund to save money. We're taking advantage of these really great interest rates we have right now. And so doing that refunding bond was strategically important because the district over the life of that bond saved about $615,000. And so when that bonding agent is standing here and talking about it, the big question is how much money is it going to save us? And on this one, it saved the district large sum of money. Okay, let's go on over to your revenues. So as I look down through your revenues, I am a big fan of graphs. When there's so much information like there is on your revenue streams, I think graphs are terrific. And in this particular case, this is your revenues, and I'm comparing them for 5 years. And you can see there that the bulk of your revenues, jump back the page here. I just can't see that little screen, so I got to look at my cheat sheet here. I'm getting too old to see those little numbers. This year, your local revenue increased when compared to the previous year. Now, you had property tax increases of about $20,000 and sales tax increased revenue of about $90,000. But the big increase is $750,000, and that's interest that you're earning on those escrow funds. Quite possibly purchased interest or premiums on the bond, but interest, if you will. So it's earnings on investments is the bulk of what caused your local revenue to go up. You can see that your local revenue still makes 53% of your total revenue. If you go to a district that's got a big assessed valuation because they've got some sort of a power plant there or something like that, your local revenue may be up there 80%. There's an inverse effect. Then your state revenue goes way down. So that formula takes into effect how much money you're making on local revenue. And then here is your expenditures. And we again do 5 years. We like to compare what happened kind of post-ARA, all that federal money we got to make up for the state a couple of years ago. And you can see that your expenditures were pretty high back in 2011. You got that extra federal money. You were required to spend it quickly and get the money back into the economy. And now that federal revenue has tapered off, and so you're having less expenditures than you did back then. When you look at it, it looks like your expenditures are up quite a bit. But we have to remember that you paid down a big sum on that 2005 bond, which drives up your expenses when you're just looking at it. When I do my graph, though, I leave out those principal payments so we can just see what you're doing as far as furthering the mission of the district, and that has to do with salaries and purchase services and supplies and so forth. And you can see that salaries make up 74%, salaries and benefits, 74% of your total budget. All right, and this next slide is your reserves, and we always talk about reserves when we come visit with you. We like our districts to have at least 24% reserves, and 24% equals 3 months, 8% equals a month. And just like you and I, whenever we have a shortfall in cash, that reserve helps us buy the refrigerator or whatever we need. And just like us, if y'all didn't have those reserves, when you got to November, your income would not be able to sustain your expenses. And that's the reason we like that 24% minimum, so that you have the money in place to pay your bills until your property taxes come in. And the district is able to do that because it has worked hard to maintain the reserves that it has. You're above 24%, you're closer to 4 months reserve, so very healthy. And you can see this is your ADA, your average daily attendance. It stayed pretty flat. I think it had about a 2-student bump, and so your ADA is staying pretty constant right now. All right. We also look at your compliance with Missouri laws and regulations. That has to do with budget, transportation, attendance, expenditures, all that reporting that you do to DESE, and we look at all of that. And what we say here in this report is that district's assertion that it comply with Missouri laws and regulations is fairly stated. We saw one immaterial instance of non-compliance, and when I say immaterial, it's not on that front page. It's just as an addendum to that report. It's immaterial. It's not a big deal, if you will. It wasn't of any size to cause any difference to your financial statements. But we audit your transportation because you do have funding based on miles and riders. And so when we looked at that transportation, it had an error in it, and that's been corrected since we were out for the audit. We look at your internal controls. And I'm just a hard case on internal controls because I think if you have good internal controls, then you're safeguarding the assets of the district. And when I'm not doing audits, I'm actually helping districts that we don't audit look at their internal controls and making sure they're sound. So while we do not audit your internal controls, we do look at them to determine the scope of our audit in certain areas. We see good internal controls over here, and we're going to go over here and look and see if we can audit some other area. And I did that this year. I audited your Fund 4 expenditures, and I didn't see any non-compliance with Missouri laws or with board policy.
Thank you.
I did that in every district. I should have had more excitement over that. And we looked at Fund 4 expenditures at every district I go to. And districts are pulling a ton of information. Anybody that's been through our audit knows it's a lot of information that you pull. But I also have districts pull a ton of Fund 4 because it's kind of been in the news with some other districts where the states come in and looked at their compliance. And I thought, I want my schools to be a thing of pack. And so we looked at the Fund 4 expenditures. If your board policy said you had to get quotes, did you get it? We saw that. If the state statute says you got to do this, are you doing that? And we saw that. So we saw no non-compliance on Fund 4 expenditures. That's terrific. Because sometimes you can say, oh, I need a tuba. And you forget that, oh, the tuba's over this limit. I'm supposed to get a quote. I just need a tuba. And so sometimes that gets surpassed, and I didn't see that happen. Okay, that was more on that than I intended. But now you know I really worked hard on it, and you all came out really well. All right. We also look at, I can't even see that one. It's so small. All right. Still on internal controls. When we're out, we look at internal controls, then we have to do our federal program audit. And we select different federal programs every year to come out and audit. It depends on which ones under the standards are determined major programs, whether or not we've audited them in the past couple of years. And this year we audited your Title I and your IDEA. And all of these markings indicate that we didn't find any problems with your federal program compliance. For every federal program you have, there's 14 compliance requirements associated with that. In food service, we've got to look at verification and application and reporting and all that sort of thing. On Title I, we have to make sure there's highly qualified teachers. Same thing with special education. Is there highly qualified teachers teaching those subjects or those areas that under your Title I plan you said you were going to touch on? And we did not find any non-compliance on Title I or special education. We're repeating the comment on segregation of duties. Segregation of duties are the foundation of having internal controls in your district that will safeguard the assets. You guys are transitioning from one software to another. So right now the system administrator function for that software is sitting on your board treasurer. I'm of the opinion that needs to be moved out to IT so we can limit some of your board treasurer's capabilities and protect her and the district and safeguard those assets. And so I know that management is looking on how to achieve that and still getting the job done, because implementing a new software is tedious and troublesome, and we're doing a new tax software this year. I'm just starting it because I'm having my client sitting in front of me. I'm supposed to look all smart, and I can't even find the buttons on there where I'm supposed to go. So I know that it takes time to learn that software. But next year we'll be asking to see if y'all got that function moved over to the IT department. I think it's important. And then this other comment has to do with the fact that we've had this in your audit for years and years, and I'm so happy to tell you we're going to remove it next year. But what it says is that we draft your financial statements. And until we feel all warm and fuzzy that the CFO or the bookkeeper is going through those financial statements and making sure they are correct, because they're yours, not ours, then we have to leave this comment in the audit. But Kathy has far surpassed our expectations in a very short amount of time. She's done the continuing education she needs to. She pours over the financial statements to make sure they're correct. And she found an error that we made this year. So once you find an error that we made, you're passed. Because we have the most amazing quality controller in our office. She also sits on the peer review board, and she decides who gets to keep her license and who doesn't. And so for something to get past her is pretty amazing. And Kathy picked up on it, so she got an A. And so we'll get to take this comment out next year. All right. And then these last page is just our report to administration. And you all, some of you board members have known this for a long time, and you know we never let this report go out with at least some recommendation in there, because we learn stuff every year. We look at the state audit reports, we see things that they're interested in, we check them on our districts, and maybe we'll just make a recommendation to strengthen or shore up a control, or we may even let you know something's coming down the pipe. And that's where we do that, is right here. This is the lowest level of concern, and so we put it in this report as just additional consideration. It's not even part of your audit. This first one has to do with transportation efficiency. This one's already been dealt with. It's kind of weird. You would think that if you were 98% efficient, that'd be awesome. But if you don't get up to 104% efficient, which means you're less efficient, then you don't get as much funding. And so you're able to push some administrative costs over there, you know, like the superintendent getting involved with the transportation department, or the principals out there monitoring students getting on and off the buses and that sort of thing. You can push some more cost over there, become less efficient, and get more state funding. So that's what we've done here, and it'll actually generate you a little bit more cash. And we've given Kathy a spreadsheet we use to test that. She's just going to do that herself next year. I want to skip down to, because I know I'm probably past 15 minutes here and you're ready to go. With regard to the fuel cards, we make this recommendation a lot in our cities, where Wright Transportation and Quick Trip and Casey's and all those companies out there now, if you put your odometer reading in, their reports will actually generate miles per gallon. So we like all of our folks that have those cards to put in their odometer reading so that we can see drops in miles per gallon, which piques our interest, and then we want to figure out why. And so we're recommending that all of your folks that hold a gas card put those odometer readings in, so we can, then it'll track that miles per gallon. Sometimes it'll go up. I've audited some ambulance districts that spiked up to 80 miles to a gallon. That's because they've taken somebody to Columbia or something. But typically, an ambulance should run 4 to 8 miles an hour, and so we can just watch that. School buses, police cars, all those things have pretty standard miles per gallon. And so we want you to utilize that function that is available on your fuel card. And then this last one is just on the free and reduced verification. We saw that all the data was captured perfectly. It's just got when it got input into the Moses file, there was a keying error. And so the reason I have this in here is because I think it's always important to review, have somebody else review. You've got your trees person, your forest person, and sometimes that forest person will notice something that the trees person is just too embedded to see. So that second review when you're submitting the DESI is a good idea. So overall, that's the information I wanted to convey to you. I want to let you know that I think the financial statements look really good, sound, you have adequate reserves, and it appears that the district is conservative in its expenditures in order to maintain that. Because we saw a lot of districts back whenever that state funding went down, really suffer down into either single digits or into the teens. It makes it really hard to pay your bills in November and October. So I commend you all on that capability to keep those reserves healthy and safe. Is there any questions for me? Yes, sir.
I was going to ask Ms. Van working this, but I get a printout of our checks and so forth, and with the credit cards itself, I don't even know how many credit cards are in the district. I don't even know how many credit cards.
Each principal has one.
Each principal.
And director.
Because when I get a printout statement, it just goes to Amazon or Walmart or Quill but when we get the checks that you write in Ms. Van Working, it says where it went to, what it was for. I'd like to see actually who's charging on the credit cards, and like we do on the check register.
On the check register.
Would that be possible? Is that a good idea? Because, as I said, that what we see is that Amazon, Down Home Diner, Applebee's, we really don't know,
Your district does a really good job of requiring detailed receipts for any credit card expenditure. And then those expenditures are approved at the different levels of administration, either the principal or at the central office level. And then when we come in every single year, we pick 1 or 2 months of credit cards And I usually pick those months that people are shy on cash on. Like, I always look at the December statement, because I am going to misbehave. I'm probably going to misbehave, so I can buy a Christmas present or something. So I try to think as much like a crook as I can when I'm picking these, and I'm really good at thinking like that. We even have good internal controls in my office, because I handle all the cash. And I'm a good fraud thinker. And but we're looking at those when we make our determination of what we're going to audit. And you'll notice that I don't have any comments on credit cards at all. Now, as a board member, I might want to see the superintendent's, because if he was really tough and he just told Kathy just to look the other way or something, you want to know that. That hasn't happened. I don't want y'all getting that on camera that I said that.
What did you say? Louder?
I didn't say anything of the sort. But if you wanted to make sure there's checks and balances, because we always have to have those, then you may want to say, we at least want to see the superintendent's credit card charges, so we can make sure that he's not out having a great time on the district. Again, we always look at the superintendent's charges, and we've never seen any of that. I think Dr. McDonald is major conservative, and we haven't seen anything like that. You haven't seen it in your district. Your district is so conservative and is so good about turning their receipts in. But if you have the principals looking at the activities that are at the building level, and you have your business administrator, your superintendent, or your assistant superintendent looking at the things that are happening at the central office level, and really you just need to look at the highest level to make sure that everything's happening the way you expect. So if you were going to ask for anything, I might ask for the superintendents, just so that you're looking at those.
Or could you pick one administrator per month?
You sure could if that's what the
Sure.
board wants to do.
Sure.
And in
I'm
little
not saying any
districts.
wrongdoing.
No, I
It's just a
understand that.
check and balance, just a truly a check and balance.
I understand that completely. I do some tiny little schools where it's a one bookkeeper office, and the board has to participate in internal controls. They have to take turns looking at the bank statement images, or that sort of thing. So you don't want to make yourself do work that's already being performed, but if you can select one that you want to do some participation in, I think that would be great if that works for everybody. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. You're welcome. Assessment and evaluation of district programs.
Give our budget information, Kathy.
Again, this month, we're falling just right in line with last year. Revenues are within less than 0.25% of the same period. Expenditures are falling within the projected levels, approximately 1.25% over last year. And the percentage fund balance for the operating funds at the end of September is 32.38%. Any questions?
Was this on did we put back to what I asked to throw out some, what bills were paid?
Good job on the work.
Yeah.
Kathy and her department do a very good job. I mean, to prepare us for the audit, but that doesn't happen just from August 1st until they show up. That happens July 1 through June 30th. They do an excellent job. And then communications relations plan, Ms. Filer?
Well, I won't go over what was provided to you because I know you all can read, so I'll let you read that and answer any questions you have from that. I would like to hit on a few things that are happening just this week that involve some of the major things that I do. We kicked off our 2014 attendance campaign. Last year we did our Be Here campaign, and this year we're doing our Be Here, Be Healthy campaign, because we know sickness is one of the main reasons kids aren't at school. So we're working to provide information and tips to families and to kids about how to maintain good health so that they can be in our classrooms. This week we also kick off our annual food drive, which is a big community service project the district does to help our local food pantry. We have many community partners in this food drive that are adopting our grades or our schools and helping provide food along with us. Bright Futures has a couple of big things going on. That's another hat I wear. So wanted to mention that we're doing a World Series shoe drive through the World Series to try to collect shoes for our Cats basements. That's one of our biggest needs as we head into the winter months. And we're also working on our Adopt a Family for the holiday season. And Harrisonville Highlights, which is the printed newsletter that goes out to our patrons 3 times a year, went to the printer on Monday. It should hit mailboxes the first week of November. And it's also a community partnership newsletter that we partner with the city and the hospital, the chamber, many of those groups to put that newsletter together. So I'll take any questions you have over my report.
Easy to read.
Go ahead. No problem.
Any particular size or type of shoes that you're needing?